Yeah, thank you very much for the invitation to come here. I'm very pleased to see so many people here. This is very nice for Norwegian, especially from northern part of Norway, to come to Iceland. We feel just like home. So I think we are struggling with a lot of the same issues when it comes to fisheries. So we can learn a lot from each other and see our strength and weakness of both our system. See how this knowledge can be turned over to do it better for both parties. So the title I got today is the economic and social justification of quota auctioning. I've been interested in mainly the relationship between how the regulation and the performance in the industry. I see the interaction between regulation and performance. And especially as a seafood marketing, my professorship is in seafood marketing. I'll be interested in how regulation also influences maximization of the product value, the value of the quota. And we have the special case that the fish is a common property, and so the question is how to maximize the value of a common property. So I've been studying this topic for rather many years, so I just summarized my 8 publications which touch into this topic since 1998. So I think this is available for those who want to study this topic in more detail. But the basic point we have to start with in fishery is the answer to the question, who owns the common fish resource? And we know historically fish has been considered as nullius, things that do not have an owner. And the legal acquisition came through by capture. So the private ownership came when the fisherman brought his catch into his boat. But now we have, as you know, a new situation where the fish stocks are a scarce, valuable natural capital, also before the catch. So the question is, who owns the commons, this resource? And the law practices different way in the different countries. But I think in Iceland, just as we do in Norway, we are legally say that the resource is owned by the commons. Or as Stevens has published an article in 1981, he discussed this topic from historical legal point of view, and he said that the fish resource is a public trust. It's like a public trust held by the state behalf of the people. So this position, I think, is common in very many countries. I've been involved in Chile. They have got a new resource law now in 2013, and they say that the resource is legally owned by the state. But maybe the meaning is the same, that it's owned by the commons or owned by the state. In both cases, it is a government role as an administrator on behalf of the commons or the state, not behalf of the fishers or the industries. It is on behalf of the commons. That is the role of the government to manage this common resource. So in principle, we legally, it's a good argument to say that the right to the TSC belongs to all members of the commons, and they have the same right. We also know that some coastal communities, not individual, not businesses, may have historic preference right. For example, indigenous people. We see that in Northern Pacific, in Alaska, that the indigenous people have their own quota rights. We see that in New Zealand, the indigenous people had also some right to the stocks. And in Norway, we have discussion in the Finnmark. You have the Sami people. They have got some right based on their history, on dependency of the resource. We also the issue about resource rent allocation. Resource rate is a super profit can be extracted from harvesting quota above alternative use of catch and production factors. So this is the question is how to manage this resource rent. So actually managing fish stock is to manage the resource rent. And this is the governmental responsibility to allocate a sustainable resource rent for all members of the society, like all other public goods, and not only on behalf of some interest group, but also the politician has some political preferences. So the politician and the government has to use their political preference when they do this allocation task. Also, sometimes it's confusing what is a quota right. And very important to underscore that a quota is a share of TAC, and a total allowable catch, which should be is managed from sustainability principle long term. So the quantity, actually, the quantity in tonnage varies from year to year. The description of quota has different, is described on different way. In Norway, we have what we interpreted to English to individual quota share. It is a share of a total quota allocated to each vessel, allocated from the ministry, but in principle is not allowed to transfer this quota without the involvement of the government. And we have the concept of ITQ, which is allocated at the first time from the ministry, but later become tradable between vessel owners. But in both cases, the quota share may be attached different kind of constraints. First of all, it could be time limited. And we'll see a lot of examples that this quota share is maybe running from 1 year to 25 years. When it comes to coastal vessel in Norway, for example, they only have, in principle, quota for 1 year at a time. But in industrial fleet, they have the quota for 23 to 25 years. And in the new legislation in Chile, they have a time limitation on 20 years. So that is, it is time limited. In some cases, we'll see the quotas also attached landing obligations. In northern Norway, we have the trawlers, which is owned by the industry. They have got some kind of dispensation from the fishery law because they have a constraint to deliver the catch on certain local communities. So the point is that this quotas should support the industry. Is the main task. We have also a limitation when it comes to gear and vessel size. Norway, we have also divided the quota in a kind of ladder, where in each step on the ladder, the quota is shared. And each of this ladder has some constraint when it comes to is it trawlers, the one group, and vessel bigger than 28 meters is one group, vessel between 15 and 21 meters is one group. So we have different groups. And each group has their specific quota, which is divided among the members in that group. We have also a division between kind of gears. Some have quota for trolling, others have quota for so-called passive gears like longliners and that kind of thing. And we have constraints. In order to move, we are not allowed to move quota from one group to another group without support from the government. And also here in Iceland, I understand you have restrictions of export. So if you land unprocessed fish in England, you are deducted 10% more quota. If that was the case before, I understand this regulation is still in effect here in Iceland. So the principle, there is no free ITQ. Always limitation of constraints attached to the quota, and that makes it possible for the government to influence the allocation of the quota through this kind of regulation. When we look at international, see what's happening so we see a common trend. The process you have gone through here in Iceland and Norway, you see it in different countries, follow more or less the same pattern. The typical, when the individual quota system is introduced, it is based on the present vessel's catch history for a 3 to 5 specific qualification years. So typical when you close the fishery, it is a catch history the 3 to 5 years before the time, which is deciding how the quota is allocated. But it's interesting to note that these kind of regulations I call it a historic emergency situation. Very often when the quota is introduced, it is, the catch capacity has to be down, the profitability has to go up, and the politician is under high pressure to find some solution to divide a TAC on individual vessel. But the consequences by allocating quota in this way is seen for many, many years after. So, as I see it, there are, for example, a lot of threats, or maybe call it facilitating factors that this initial decision has later on. So that when you start opening for tradable quota, like the individual quota share, the IQS, in Norway the quota can be transferred by the vessel. You cannot sell the quota, but you can transfer the quota by buying the vessel and strip it from the quota and sell the other vessel. And in Iceland you can trade quota in itself. But the problem is when you start that kind of process, which is motivated to make it each company more profitable. You need, too many licenses, and you need to concentrate them to a certain degree to improve the profitability in the industry. But in the same time, this means that you become a privatization process of the resource rent. Resource rent, which was a common property, become more and more a private property. And we see that the quota control concentrates on a few incumbents and also geographic regions. And we see this trend in Norway, in Iceland, in New Zealand, in the US, in Chile, all over. And this makes a lot of disturbance in the society. In Norway, we have what we call an active district policy, and the remote area are under strong pressure because they lose their fishing rights. They have fish just outside their port and no right to go to catch the fish. So actually, these days we have some kind of political riot in the north because of this concentration of rights. But from an economic point of view, another problem is that all monopolies, they tend to be lazy over time. So company that can rely just on so to say milk a cow may be lazy, because if they are satisfied by their profit to harvest the monopoly right, then maybe not interesting to innovate. So the the allocation of quota, which is concentrated on fewer company, then we get some kind of oligopoly. So and that you become, this company this may be weakening innovation and product value-adding effort. And then you limit the quota access for qualified and creative new firms that have new idea and want to take advantage of new concept, but they are not allowed to get into industry. And this is on a very, there's a lot of economic theory showing that this is not special for fishery. This is same for all industry which is concentrated too much, and if they rely on some kind of monopoly rent. And we see, if you compare it in Norway, we have a development strong development in frozen on board H&G product, and the effort in the Norwegian system to create new products, to focus on value adding, is rather weak. I think that the Icelandic system is much more innovative in that case, because you have also a landing auction, which is pushing the industry to be competitive in order to to get control of the value chain. We see that also in Chile. In Chile, almost all mackerel they are catching in Chile goes to fish meal instead of utilizing the mackerel to product for human consumption. And in Chile also the mackerel resource is owned by maybe 5 companies, and they make a lot of money to make fish meal. So they have not actually no incentive to do further development of this raw material. If you compare with Norway, almost 90% of the mackerel and the herring go into human consumption, so there are this kind of constraints influencing the behavior of the firm involved. So, simply speaking, without competition pressure, the innovation efficiency will decrease over time. And I think this landing auction is a very good example on showing that landing auction is pushing companies in innovative direction. In Chile, as I mentioned, this introduced a new law in 2013, and they introduced quota auction in the industrial fleet. So the present regulation now says that up to 15% of the industrial quota should go into auction, except for those fishery that is collapsed. So they say that when the stock is building up and they are on a sustainable level, then they will introduce auction. And they say that this auction mechanism should be developed over some time. So they say the first year 5%, next year 10%, and third year 5%. So altogether over 3 years period of time, they will have 15% of the total quota, this jack mackerel mainly, and also some anchovies, into the auction mechanism. They also have opened the TSC for smaller businesses. In order to open the door for smaller businesses, they put on 1% of the quota for which a smaller business can offer give a bid on. So when it comes to the incumbents in Chile, they have still granted 85% of the TSC, and that is on a 20 years term. It was a strong opposition in Chile, I think, which demanded a much higher share. But I think that was kind of national compromise that they landed on 85% and 20 years term. So the industry was expected unlimited licenses, but the compromise was on 20 years. So, but also Chile has introduced a resource tax on 4.2%. And this resource tax is is both on sales value and also if you sell quota, you also have to pay this tax on the quota. So the advantage of a public TAC auction is that it is offering all in the society the same opportunity to get into the industry on a competitive basis. It also offers a possibility to share the TAC in regional quota. So if you want to give priority to some regions, it's possible to put a part of the TAC and auction it specific for in one region. This kind of auction mechanism can also, it's not only against cash, it could be some auction can also be attached to other public services according to public wants. For example, if you maybe require someone to build a quay or industrial infrastructure could be a part of this kind of bidding system. The quota may also require a pre-qualification. So in order to be qualified to participate in auction, you need some pre-qualification. So like you have to have a license, you need some financial guarantees, you need some certificates, and so on and so on. So it's not free for everybody independent of qualification, but you have to satisfy a certain qualification level in order to participate in auction. So the major benefit from such independent public auction is that competition, you motivate, competition motivate effort. So to say, the best win. I try to say, use to the example in football, you need an organized competition to get the best football team. And so on, I think also in fisheries, and you need some organized competition in order to get the best, to find the best actors. And when you increase the value by competition, you also may maximize the resource rent and the job creation as a basis of utilizing the resource. And also competition strengthens the pressure for investment in innovation, jobs and growth. So, and I think all aspiring growing industry need open access for qualified newcomers and new firms, which is bringing in new ideas and incentives. Very often the old company has, they have their model, they have their way of doing the business. So in order to get some new idea in, you very often had to bring in new companies. And I also think that the auction may prevent the lazy monopoly effect, which is relying on the resource rent tapping. And also the auction gives an opportunity to collect the resource for the public. You can say that the auction price is a kind of royalty. So, and similar, this is a resource rent. So an efficient auction and the payment the company do to get access to the resource is kind of a resource rent for the commons. And these funds, which may be accumulated from the auction, is of course a financial source to benefit the entire society and industry and fishing communities, depending on what policy is implemented to utilize and allocate this rent. So this is a theory, but unfortunately we also see that in some cases industry and country has tried to use the auction mechanism. But in all the cases I have studied, it shows that they have failed. So there have been trial auctions in Russia, Estonia, and Chile, as I'm aware of, maybe other places too. And I've been trying to find out why are these auctions failing? What is the problem with this, the way the auction is organized? And I think the main problem is that when concentration of fishing rights reaches a certain level, prices is not decided in the auction but in the back room. The industry, the involved actors, is colluding and deciding between each other to what the price should be. So what we have learned, not only from this case, but also from the landing auction, all other kind of auctions, and the stock market, you need a strong anti-collusion regulation. So if they are a proper anti-collusion regulation are absent, then the prices is decided in the back room. And of course, nobody wants to pay for something you can get for free. So all the actors, they will not interested to this kind of construction. So we can observe that collusion and corruption among the ITQ owners counteracting the auction markets. So, because, as I mentioned, the fishing company are not willing to pay for the government for the quota rights, if the alternative, they can get it for free. Do you choose to pay or get it for free? I mean, the choice is very, very easy. We also see in many countries, especially I'm watching the Estonia and Russia, and we see a high degree of collusion between fishing company and politicians. We call it corruption. And the corruption risk is highest when the fisheries management has low public attention. In Iceland, you're discussing in the public all the time about how to regulate the fisheries. But in many countries, like in Russia and Estonia, there's no public discussion. I lived in Seattle in 1998, 1999, when the US put a quota on the pollock fishery in Alaska. No newspaper was discussing at all. Everything was inside the corridors. And of course, when this kind of discussion is not feel any public light on it, the actors which is participate take advantage of that. So, in order to have a proper regulation from the public side, you also need a public attention around these issues. So the success criteria for auction is that it is depending on a strong legal framework and institutions for this public trust management. So you need a reliable TSE regulation. The auction has nothing in principle with TSE regulation to do. You need, the starting point is a TSE to be allocated. You need a strong counteracting collusion regulation, and you need the openness for newcomers and innovative entrepreneurs. I think that's the key issues. And I think the landing auction show the way, give good idea of what you can perform. Because when you go to the auction market here in Reykjavik, you go by internet, everybody can go and give a bid on the fish, on a specific, if you want that fish of that size and specific freshness, or you can give a bid on exactly the product quality you want. So it means that small guys, people have a niche orientation to the market, can always go and find some fish in the auction market. And that means that all the extra value, the value added that you can extract from a big variety of fish quality can be extracted in much higher degree when you open up this lot of entrepreneurial driven processes. But this landing auction, it's worked purely because it is well protected by strong anti-collusion regulation. In Norway, we have a landing auction of pelagic fish, herring, mackerel, and blue whiting, but also on frozen at sea codfish. They sold through electronic auctions. But the funny thing is that in the northern part of Norway, we don't have any fresh fish auction for codfish. In Iceland, you have about 20% of the landings go through the fresh fish auction. But I think what's interesting with the Icelandic model is that even if only 20% of the fish go through the landing auction, this price influences the whole market. The vertical integrated companies, where the fishermen have, I understand, an agreement, they get their payment from the value of the catch, which is calculated by the price on the daily price on the auction, multiplied by 76%. So they get 76% of the auction price, multiplied with the catch they have done. So it means that the price of the auction is driving the whole market, and also the integrated big company, they get the the chill or the warm, what to say, from the day-to-day auction. So that means that they feel the pressure to do even better every day to be competitive in this market. When you look into the European Union, you find auction in all ports, regulated by EU regulation. So then you have an independent body that is managing all the transactions and quality sorting of the fish and everything, and give payment for the fishermen after the auction is performed. So auction is a very normal, very it's a way to allocate resources, which can be very efficient. So the problem is how to counteract deterring pricing, because the risk in an auction is that the big guys with the deep pocket, financial pocket, can temporarily pay high quota prices to keep out the smaller entering firm. So it means that if there are no regulations, the big guy will take over the whole auction, and then when they taken over the auction, there's no auction left. So, and also if the incumbent company have some quota for free and some quota they had to buy on the auction, it means they can even out. The price they pay on the auction can be even out on the quota they get for free. And that gives them a strong advantage compared with the small guys that don't have any quota for free. So you had to find mechanism to counteract this mechanism. So a solution for this is that the same price paid for the quota in the auction can be charged for the quota allocated on grandfathering principles. It's say if let's say you put out 15-20% of the quota to the market, and this gets a market price, and then you can say, okay, market is pricing the quota so and so, and this price has also the other company that had got the quota initially for free had to pay as a royalty. So then you make put in a mechanism that the big guys is not has to be careful to put the price on the auction too high, because then they have to pay a higher royalty also for the quota they have got from based on other principles. Another way to do it is to not only you don't allow a company to buy a quota up front, but you can do a contract up front, but you can pay it as you fish. So if the small guys they don't have need a big bank in behind in order to buy a quota, they can give a bid, and they pay for when they have sold the fish. In that way, you reduce the power of financial strength. And also, of course, you can limit the maximum quota shares on a single firm. I understand here in Iceland it's 12% or a 20% limitation of one company. But even if there are 5 companies, 20% each, they can just take a dinner together and they decide the prices. So that is not an efficient measure. So you have to also focus how is the auction organization. So I think that there's a big opportunity to run anonymous internet auction. Just like you go and buy thing on eBay. You can put in a bid, and it bids lasts there for some time, and you don't know who put in the bid, so that you keep it completely anonymous. But in some cases, the number of potential bidders may be too low for an efficient electronic auction process. So there's alternative. For example, the government or the body that is auctioning the quotas can call for a sealed anonymous tender, which is practiced in a public construction, a research project, or, for example, in allocation of oil and mineral rights. So in that case, there are very few bidders, and the government they just ask for anonymous offer from the qualified companies. This is actually practiced in the Washington State in the U.S. There are some geoduck, that is an animal living in the sand in the fjord in Washington State, and they have a yearly auction based on sealed anonymous tender. Another question is that auction may disturb the market. So I don't think it's a good option to change the system from one year to another, but I think you can learn from the idea in Chile that you can build up the share to the auction step by step. So you can 5% the first year, 10% next year, and so on. So if you do a transition from one way or allocate quota to a new, the company, the industry can have time to adapt and make their decision based on, they know that in 10 years a certain share of the quota will be turned over to auction. Yeah. It also been discussion about transaction efficiency. It's an efficient way to allocate quota through auction. I think that the modern information technology makes it very, very efficient. So I understand the transactions cost on the fresh fish auction in Iceland is maybe 1 to 2%. So, and that includes also physical logistics and products and so on. But now we are only talking about the internet-based auction, which should be run maybe less than 1% of the cost. The interesting thing with the Chile engagement, I was hired in by those who wanted auction in Chile. And Ragnar Arnason here in Thailand, is he here? No. He was hired in by the incumbent companies. So we were looking for the issue from 2 different angles. So we have had an academic discussion of this topic. So I have published that my answer in my paper, which is open from the internet for those who are interested in that. So I just go through the main argument that we were through. The first of all, when you do this kind of analysis, it's the question of what kind of theoretical model do you apply. So Ragnar Arnason, he used a neoclassical economic model where the profit maximization happened without any embedded society. Just you look at it as a very narrow way. But well, I more think about the profit. The company is not doing profit maximizing; they are doing profit satisfaction, looking for satisfied solution. And companies is including in a value chain. So you have to emphasize the importance of the value chain, the social embedded system where the company is involved. Ragnar said that ITQ was much better than other method when it comes to quality of property rights. I claim that the IQS has same quality as a property right as a ITQs. It is secure, it gives exclusivity, it is good for performance, it is good for transferability. But in addition, the license may be time limited, not permanent, and all the transferability goes through an auction system, not through directly between 2 private partners. Ragnar said also that the most fair way to assigning the ITQ is to sign them to the incumbents. That was most fair. I said that it is not fair to assigning the IQS to the incumbents. And especially the 3 years qualification and previously investment are not sufficient justification for allocation of monopoly rights. It's always important for improving the competition and improving the output of the industry that newcomers, which is different stages of product or market cycles, should have equal opportunity. So it is, just putting on 3 years qualification is a discrimination of other qualified company maybe which is positioned to give a bid some years later. Ragnar also argued that economic prosperity is depending on permanent rights to control the resource. I argue that economic prosperity is not depending on permanent right to control the resource. Both big companies and small entrepreneurial are necessary for economic prosperity. Both should have access to the resource on even condition. And also I learned from Adam Smith, which is famous economist. He wrote a book in 1776. He said that, with 2 businessmen is talking together, what are you talking about? They're talking how to get rid of the market. They talk how to make a monopoly for themselves. So the main reason why we should have a strong state is to prevent this kind of collusion in the economy. And the Commons is interested in strong competition without collusion in order to take the benefit from the market. So a free market is depending on strong regulation to avoid colluding. Ragnar also argued that auction design reduces the efficiency. I argue that the Icelandic landing auction shows a very high degree of efficiency, so that's not the value argument. Maybe Torbjörn Trondsen mentioned in his introduction that we actually been working with a paper together, and we try to apply the auction mechanism in the international allocation of stock like straddling fish stocks like mackerel, and which is in high profile here in Iceland these days, and blue whiting. And so we found that this could be interesting. And the idea of this international auction was that when the government has agreed about the TSC share, they have among them, they can allocate actually this TSC share to individual company through an auction, where the Icelandic and Norwegian, everybody can have the same access to the quota, depending on their ability, they're willing to bid. But the royalty, the benefit that comes in from that kind of auction can be divided between the different countries depending on their shares. So the countries can have the resource allocated on a fair way in the same time as you can open up for a more efficient industrial behavior among the individual firm. Today, when we are negotiating in mackerel, it is very often it's a competition among the companies. So government is maybe more supporting the company than negotiate behave on their own, based on the comments. That maybe it's a part of I think the deadlock of this negotiation. So, but if you open up, splitting up the commons interest and the business interest, maybe you can also have kind of more of flexibility to find solution. So, this paper, for those who are interested, is published in 2008 in Marine Policy. So, I think I used almost my time. So, the quota auction, my conclusion is that it opened for entrepreneurial effort and innovation. It should and contracting monopoly power. It is an efficient method for the society, which is the owner of the resource, to allocate the harvesting right. An auction are an efficient motivator for more value adding and to collect the resource rent. I think also the auction may give a better social, it's better social justified. It is open for all in principle and allocate the resource rent to all. It's also possible for regionalization of the auction or individual quota constraint. I mean, you can have an auction for one part of the country, or you can impose different kind of constraints to the licenses, which actually drive give priority to some communes or region or so on. So it's possible to protect also the small societies if that is a political priority in the country. So the design of the regulation is important for success. I think bad design is the key reason why the previously auction has failed, both in Chile and, as I said, in Russia and Estonia and so on. So it is not the auction itself that has failed, it is a bad regulation and design that has made this auction failing. So, as I mentioned, the landing auctions works very well, it is well organized, and they give benefit for both consumers and the society. Thank you very much.